Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media. Hello everybody, my name is Mel V, coming to you live from our studio here in Portugal. And this is an episode of Stop South African Genocide live on Conscious Consumer Network, broadcasting out at our 7 p.m. GMT slot. And I'd also like to welcome tonight my co-host Karin Smith all the way from Texas. Hello Karin.
Hi Mel.
And our guest tonight is James Kemp, the media spokesperson for ORANIA. And he's someone who I've been wanting to talk to for some time because the whole ORANIA setup is of great interest to a number of us South Africans, both inside South Africa and those of us who are refugees abroad. So hello, James, and welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Mel, and hello, Karin. This is the first time that I'm actually seeing you.
Wow. James, we've spoken so many times. It's funny to think that you don't know me by face.
Well, it's great to have you both with us. And of course, I think I'm just going to let James, you get started by telling us a little bit about your background and how you came to be on this journey communicating this information.
Thank you, Mel. Yeah, it's been quite a journey. I grew up in South Africa. I still live in South Africa, and I think the one thing that's always been most important to me as an Afrikaner, as part of this very special minority group, as I feel about the Afrikaner, is that our heritage and our culture will always have a room in this country. And as we've seen, as I experienced at university, as I experienced at various other places, and as a lot of my friends are experiencing right now with them in their workplaces, people working at state departments, people having kids in school, that Afrikaner culture is coming under a lot of fires. It's being put under a lot of pressure. And many years ago, ORANIA as a community started in this specific form, actually 26 years ago. And it was in my student years that I came to know about ORANIA in this form, and I found it quite intriguing that people are saying that if you want to have a community, if you want to ensure that Afrikaner culture is being kept alive, you have to do it in a geographical area as well, where you can decide politically what the language is being taught in schools, what's the culture that's being taught in schools, what's the way that the municipality is run, and that intrigued me, and sooner or later I became involved, and then a few years ago I moved to ORANIA and became involved full-time.
Fantastic. Karin, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, James, I because we speak to an international audience who maybe know a little bit about South Africa, but not necessarily a ton about it. We are educating them as best we can, Mel and I, but it would be nice if you would explain, apart from, yes, your Afrikaans culture being lost, why was ORANIA necessary? How did it, and go back to its beginnings, because it's a fascinating story, and I'm quite sure that our audience will be equally fascinated by it.
Well, I always joke, and I say there's two buzzwords, buzz terms rather, that the rest of the world knows about South Africa. If you ask them about South Africa, they will say, oh, apartheid and Nelson Mandela. I think that's the two buzzwords that everybody knows about South Africa. And the thing in South Africa is much more complicated than that. South Africa is much more diverse than that. But South Africa had a long, long history of, I think way before the Afrikaner came into, I know long before the Afrikaner came into power, there was, the British term, the British rule, then the Afrikaner rule and so forth, and then the apartheid rule, as I think it's mainly known, which is kind of oversimplified. when portrayed in the rest of the world. But it was a system where Afrikaners were in charge and said, okay, they want to create a system where they want to acknowledge cultural diversity and ethnic diversity in South Africa as well, by creating a space, creating a room for the various ethnic diverse groups in South Africa. It was simplified by the opposition groups, mainly then the UDF, which later came into the political world as the ANC, as being an oppressive regime. And I'm not saying that there was never elements of wrongdoing during that term. I'm just saying it's being oversimplified. And then in 94, actually you can go back before that. In 92, there was a referendum in South Africa where the minority of Afrikaners voted for a form of discussion to look at a new political dispensation in South Africa. That happened, and a short term later, 2 years later, the 94 elections took place, and the ANC, mainly black political party, took governance in South Africa. And after that, we've seen 22 years now of the post 94 elections, and you're seeing a situation where we're actually entering a situation where there's less room for cultural diversity. We liaise with a lot of other ethnic groups as well. We liaise with a black community, a Xhosa community in the Eastern Cape that feels very strongly about their culture and about their heritage, but they're not given the space to decide how to educate or in which language to educate their kids after grade 4. We're sitting with the Khoisan community towards it's situated in the same province as ORANIA, but it's about 900 kilometers from here. They are not allowed to take political power over their own municipalities. So you're seeing a lot of, I would say, oppressive rule over minority communities in South Africa as well. And the Afrikaner is one of them. The Afrikaner being mainly the white Afrikaans-speaking minority in South Africa, that's always also being dictated as to which languages they are allowed to use in state departments, which what type of history their kids are allowed to be taught in schools. And that is how ORANIA came to be, saying, but we can provide our own schools. We can provide our own municipal political institutions, and we can do that independently, and we are now doing that now for 26 years.
So, okay, I'd like to ask you two questions. The one is, let's go back to the referendum, because as you said, it was to start or continue a conversation. It was not a referendum to hand the country over to complete black rule.
Yes, Karin, I think it's one of the most ironic referendums that ever took place. One thing about the Afrikaner, and I think that's one of the challenges we experience in ORANIA as well, the Afrikaner has always been a people that believes in the government, that believes in the powers that be. And, still in ORANIA, when someone from, let's say, another province or another town that supports us makes a suggestion, they say, you must do this, because they're used to the government doing this. They say the ORANIA government must build a university. The ORANIA government must put up a home for the homeless, and things like that. And that's the thing about the Afrikaner. They trust blindly, and they've trusted blindly. And they still have this big need for big government as well. I'm a bit of, and this is not the general ORANIA principle, even though I see a lot of that here, but I'm a bit of a libertarian. I say less government. And I think that's one of the challenges that we've had as Afrikaners always, is we believed in the PW Boetas, we believed in the FW de Klerks, we believed in the powers that be before them. And whether they were good or less able, it's always dangerous to put your full trust and your full faith in one big government.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because, James, for me, that was the sellout date, literally. Because the question we were asked was, should they go ahead with the conversations and negotiations with the ANC? We were led to believe that it was to power sharing, that we the whites would have an equal say in what happened in our country. So we went out in record numbers and mostly voted yes. And yet we were so led astray at that time. And our downfall has just been exponential since then. But ORANIA was bought, I believe, in 1991. Am I correct?
That is correct, Karin. I just want to go back to your previous remark. There's quite a bit of irony if you look at the election posters of the National Party who drove the yes vote back in 92. There was someone that posted quite a few of them on Facebook recently, and it did the rounds, and it says, if you want a black government, don't vote yes. If you want majority rule, then you should not support the yes vote. Then you should support the other guys. And it happened to turn out exactly the other way around. But anyway, that aside, yes, ORANIA was bought in 1991. It was an existing community that actually was started up back in 63 by the previous government's Department of Water Affairs to build water canals for, to make agricultural activities possible for farming, that in spaces that's situated far away from the natural water resources. So these canals were built, and this was a project that took about 20 years. Like I said, it started in the 60s, and then in the mid-80s it was finished, and there was a town erected for that period, a temporary town, to make it possible for people to live here and work here and build those water canals. Then the project was finished. Now we're looking at the mid-80s, the town stood empty. It was vandalized. There was natural forms of decay and so forth. And then in 1991, the town was bought. And it was bought in specifically the people that spearheaded this movement looked at ORANIA because it was situated in the Northern Cape, which is the biggest province in the country with the smallest population. It was a town with basically no activities in a 40-kilometer radius. And they said, if we want to create a growth point where Afrikaners could start with and keep and expand power, then it should be done in a place that's geographically scarcely populated. And that is how they decided on ORANIA. Yes, it was bought in 1991. 26 years later, 26 years ago, ORANIA was in a very bad state. There was no economic activities. There was no medical facilities. Now we're sitting in a space where a few of my friends are there, also my age, mid-30s, coming here. They started businesses. Two of them have erected shopping centers from nothing, small centers in Karoo, semi-desert terms. I'm not talking about metropolitan terms, but they've put down businesses here. My wife is an optometrist. She's making a living here. So there's a lot of young economic activity here as well.
So why was this just smart on the part of the people who bought ORANIA in 91? Did they see the writing on the wall, or were they just kind of having a backstop just in case?
Well, the ORANIA movement is celebrating its 30th anniversary next year. So this is an organization that came to be in 1988 already. 1988 was a good economic time for the Afrikaner in South Africa. The Afrikaner was in power. The Rand was not doing that bad. There was a lot of sanctions and a lot of pressure, but all in all, it was actually a term where the Afrikaner was quite powerful, especially in South Africa. And this movement then 30 years ago said, we're not going to be able to keep the power forever, especially not at the rate that things are going right now. We're not going to be able to keep the power forever. So what we need to do is we need to look at a startup point, geographical startup point, where Afrikaners will have the majority power. Because what we were experiencing back in 88 and especially before that, and it's something that did not come from the 80s. It did not start in the 70s. It did not start in the 60s. Since the Afrikaner, well, actually back then the Dutch forefathers set foot in Cape Town, the first thing they did say, let's find the cheapest labor available. And I think it's something that, I don't think it's something that carried on for over 300 years. Where they said 360 years now we've been on this continent. I said, let's find the cheapest labor available, but we will not give that labor, those people that build the houses or clean the streets, we will not give them political power. And the ORANIA movement said, but if you want to have a sustainable environment, you have to create a situation where the people that cleans the streets and the people that work in the hospitals, or the doctors and the lawyers and so forth, the mayor and the plumber, all have the same political views or cultural views at least, so that you don't create a system where you have to take away political power from someone that might put you in a difficult position later. So that's how the ORANIA movement came to be.
Yeah, that's one of the amazing things that Mel and I were speaking about before the show, was that how amazing it is that I don't want to be rude, but entitled South Africans who are used to other people doing all their housework, their garden work, etc., etc. How in ORANIA, you do not do that. And that's probably kept your murder rates and your political acceptance stronger, because you don't have to argue with your gardener. You don't have to argue with your wife. You don't have your housewife. You don't have to fear them, because you do it yourselves. You have a stake in the community, a stake in your home, and every job is done by yourselves. We just found this amazing, because it's not a cultural South African thing.
It's definitely not a cultural Afrikaner thing, absolutely. Or South African thing in general. Karin, you're absolutely right. But what is interesting is that, for example, if a person runs a building team, he has a team of builders and he builds houses, and that bricklayer, he might have an argument with him on Tuesday, but on Sunday they have to sit next to each other in church. Or on Monday, their kids are still going to the same school and sit in the same classes and so forth. So it's a much more integrated thing, instead of a system where you sat with people that were culturally and so forth so far divided from you. So it's actually quite a unique and quite a new concept for the majority of Afrikaners and South Africans in general.
Yeah, I just find it totally amazing. I love the thought of ORANIA, and I love the fact that they are succeeding where others who are trying to obtain self-determination, or the Western Cape or whatever as an Afrikaner homeland, are not succeeding. So let's go back to your beginnings. So you bought this town that was literally dilapidated and falling down. And did they immediately begin working on it, moving people in, or did it lie fallow for a while until it became necessary?
Karin, work started immediately. People immediately started repairing houses, tending to gardens and things like that. So work started immediately, but ORANIA did have a very, very slow start. If we look at ORANIA's 26 years of existence, we will only see a strong growth rate population-wise in the last, say, 8 years, because before that there was limited jobs available. The tourism sector was not developed. Right now we have anybody's allowed to, or welcome rather, to take a look on our website as well, orania.co.za, which gives you a nice overview of what the community is now. There's nice photos and so forth. But back then, tourism, agriculture, the various economic sectors was not that developed yet. There were also limited medical services back then. And in the last 8 years we've seen a growth rate in ORANIA population, with regards to the population growth, of 12% per annum. If you look at other communities in the more rural areas, such as ORANIA, which is situated in more desolate areas, but if you drive into ORANIA, say it's situated in a desolate area, you will see either a negative growth rate because everybody's moving to the big metros, or at best, in a best case scenario, you'll see a 2% per annum growth. So what really made ORANIA work was the entrepreneurs, the businessmen, the people taking the initiative to say, okay, here's a river flowing through ORANIA, basically, right next to ORANIA. this could make room for nice camping sites. Or someone else went and say, okay, right now there's not someone that's fixing tires here. It's start up a shop like that. So basically the business people came to Orania, saw the initiative, saw the potential, started putting down the businesses, started creating jobs, and that led to the population growth that we are currently experiencing. But it took quite a while. To convince people as well that Orania is necessary. A lot of people had to put down the groundwork, lay down the foundation before other people could see the potential.
Because people don't really want to go into the heart of the Karoo and undergo hardship with no Wi-Fi, no TV, no servants, they don't want to disrupt their nice, comfortable lives and do that. So for the founders of Orania, it must have been very much somewhat like the trekkers, because they were in this place with nothing, had to create something and still survive without the commercial infrastructure in place. It must be very hard for them, the pioneer.
Karin, I can only imagine. I've spoken to a lot of those people, and I'm of the opinion that a pioneer museum for those guys that came first. I'm a city kid. I grew up in the city. I love my Wi-Fi. I love my tablet. I love my PC, and all the other luxuries that goes along with it. I often joke, and I say that I live on a decently sized, what do you call it, plot. It's stand, but it's small. It's in the more developed area of Orania, and my house is not that big, but it's too big for my taste. I'm used to living in apartment buildings, and if I don't get the next guy's toilet flush the next morning, I don't quite feel at home. So that's one thing that I still have to get accustomed to. But still, Orania is developing. We've laid down a plan. It's just over 1 year ago we announced our economic development plan, where we say our next step is to build a city out of Orania, and we've budgeted 183 million rand for that. It doesn't sound much, but that's only for the first 5 years, and we're 1 year in. 4 more years of that, and then we want to enter a phase where we have 10 or 12,000 people here. We're living in a small city, and then we take it from there. The plans for a university has also been announced recently, so there's a lot of work ahead, but there's the plans are in place, and we're working on it.
Right. So, okay. So what we need to sort of get to is, from these very small, very difficult beginnings, you're now planning universities in a city. How did it get there? Because in your 20 whatever years of existence, 26 years of existence, only 8 have been major growth. So how on earth, by tiny baby steps, did you get to where you are today with the funds available for these big things that are being planned?
I think the biggest step in Orania's existence was showing that we are still here. In the first year or 5 of Orania's existence, there was a lot of people, mainly journalists, if I may say, and that's why I'm thankful for you guys that's independent of the let's call them fake news that's out there. But there was a lot of journalists that kept saying, a lot of naysayers say, oh, these guys are going to disappear. Okay, they did disappear this year. Let's give them 12 more months. Let's give them 24 more months. Then they're going to be gone. Okay, so we heard they build a second school now, but it's just going to be another 6 months, and then they're gone. And if I can mention one guy, is I don't know if all your viewers are familiar with him, but look, Max de Pre is a South African journalist that was probably one of the biggest naysayers. And what was quite funny is a few months ago, a journalist, a black lady, Tandiwe Kaba, she visited Orania, and she did this brilliant article about Orania for Forbes Women Africa. And she spoke to a lot of people, mainly black academics and other people that had opinions, and their opinions were rather positive about Orania, especially one professor it's very unfortunate, I can't remember his name now. And she spoke to this professor, and he was very positive about Orania, very positive about Orania attracting young Afrikaners. And then she got a comment from Max, and Max said, it's only a matter of time, but Orania is irrelevant now. So, and it's funny, it's 26 years later, Max is still saying the same thing, but while Max is still saying the same thing, we've grown exponentially. So, but it took a lot of faith from business people, especially to reach this point. And it actually, the main thing, I think Orania's biggest success is the fact that we're still here. We're maybe not as big as a lot of people would want us to be, but we're definitely not as small as a lot of other people would like us to be.
Yeah. And the naysayers have said the most terrible things about you. I mean, it's obviously, I read the article by the black journalist that she expected to find hatred and racism and because that is what people say about Orania. You just another throwback to apartheid, and you are haters, and you are, I've read the negative publicity as well as the good. And at one stage, it was an awful lot more negative than there was good. But I am dumbfounded by the success of Orania. I'm just so, I could dance a jig about it because it's an amazing success story from very small beginnings to where you are now. And part of it has to do with your working with the local tribes. And that's another thing I'd like you to talk about, because that was one of the things that was a great surprise to me last time we spoke, and yet an obvious step in the right direction.
Karin, the one thing we have to remember is that Orania is still part of the bigger South Africa, and it's still part of the bigger African continent, and we would like it no other way. We've never tried to live in isolation or exist in isolation. We've never said that Orania or that self-determination rather leads to isolation. We and I've been along, and we've had other delegates visit Nyameni, which is a Xhosa community in the Eastern Cape. This is one of the communities that I'd like to especially refer to. There's been lots of other communities that we've liaised with and still liaise with currently. But if you look at Nyameni's challenges, it's very much the same as Orania's challenges. They want to have self-determination to a very large extent than they currently have it. Right now, for example, they have a tradition where if a man and a woman in this Xhosa village wants to get married, the tradition is that once they want to get married, they go to the chief and his council. They say, okay, we want to get married, we need some property. And then they show them a piece of land where this man can then go build a mud hut. He has a certain area where he can then keep a few cattle, a bit of cattle. She can tend to a vegetable garden. There's no spaza shop or a local shop in Nyameni. The closest shops is about 2 hours walk from this. So it's a deep rural community. Chief Mdledle, the chief of the giveaway land, married. They have to municipality then apply for a government house that we will come and we will build for them, and we will then allocate a piece of land around that house, which is not even large enough to keep a donkey on. So there's a lot of interference from government side in their existence and in their culture that they are fed up with, that they are frustrated with. The same goes for the Khoisan people, which is all indication probably the first inhabitants of this region of the African continent, and I think the Bushman people, as they might mainly be known to your viewers, and these people are. They basically, what they want to do is this piece of land, this municipal area where they have lived for such a long period of time. All they want to do is say, okay, we want to govern this part ourselves. We want to decide in which language and with which part of history our kids are educated, and the syllabus are available. It's not like they have to go and create something from the start. What they say is we want to limit the amount of National Party or ANC history the kids are learning, and focus on the political, historical figures that is important to our kids and our heritage, and they're not allowed to do that. So I think that the biggest frustrations that they experience is the same frustrations that Afrikaners experienced and that led to an ORANIA. And it's actually really funny if you look at these Xhosa people and these Khoisan people, where they say, basically what we want is, we want ORANIA, but we want it here, and we want it for the Xhosa people, the Khoisan people.
And do they have a chance of doing that?
I believe so. I absolutely believe so. I think they have the will. I think the biggest thing that they need is to work on creating economic possibilities there. Because if you look at where ORANIA is situated, there was no form of tourism here. There was no shopping centers or medical facilities and so forth. And right now, ORANIA has come into the position where it's the town where people drive 90 kilometers to, or 40 kilometers to, or to go buy bats, to go buy a good wine, or to go have their eyes checked, or to go get medical services. And that's the thing, is you have to create a type of a hub in these desolate areas where you can draw other customers as well.
No, absolutely, James. I mean, that is amazing. So, okay, the other thing I wanted to speak about is you have your own currency. You don't use South African rands, you have ORANIA currency. How does that work when you interact with people from around you?
That is an interesting question. I must say we've got a lot of hype about that. Just this morning, yesterday morning, I answered 3 emails from CNN about this. But they are currently doing a story about this as well, because there's a new twist to the ORANIA currency as well, which I'm going to get to in just a second. And from various other international news stations. The ORA is the currency that we make use of here in ORANIA. What happened is in 2004, the local Chamber of Commerce did a bit of research. They went through town, had people fill out these research forms, trying to establish how much do people have carry on them in cash right now. It was quite a large amount. And they said, okay, that cash that they're carrying around right now, that is money that's actually losing value. From day to day, from minute to minute, it's losing value due to inflation and various other contributing factors. So that's not a good system. They said what we have to do is we have to create a system where people make use of coupons. They have to trade in these rands for coupons, where and then they trade with these coupons while the rands are lying in the bank to generate interest. And with the interest that it generates, you can go and take on projects. The Chamber of Commerce can take on projects. So now the rands are lying in the bank, and people are trading with these auras, these coupons, these. If I can put it in what do you call it, quotation signs, it's useless pieces of paper that they are trading with, but while the real rands, the real currency, is lying in the bank generating an interest. So now this aura came into place. But the Chamber of Commerce also realized that they have to motivate people to make use of these coupons. It's a good thing already that the rands are lying in the bank and generating interest, but there has to be another motivation. So they spoke to the members of the Chamber of Commerce, which is the various businesses in ORANIA, and say, let's give people a discount if they buy with these coupons. And so, for example, now if you walk into the wine house, you get a 5% discount on your liquor purchase. If you walk into the hardware store, you get a certain percentage discount there as well if you buy with auras. So now you're motivating people to start using these auras. But a new twist that happened, in the last couple of weeks is a rather well-renowned economist in South Africa, Dawie Rood. I don't know, Karin, if you guys are familiar with him, but Dawie Rood is a rather well-known economist, and he entered into discussions with ORANIA along with a few other role players, saying, okay, now what we've got to do is we're going to create a an electronic currency, like Bitcoin, like these cryptocurrencies and so forth. We need to move ORANIA to the next level, and that's what we're working on right now. The story actually it broke a bit prematurely. What happened was Darby Ritt was addressing a gathering of the Free Market Foundation, a local pro-free market institution in South Africa, and he referred to that just as a side note, as a footnote actually, and it got into the mainline news. Like I said, CNN and so forth was corresponding with us over the last few days about the story, and this now. Right now, we're not sure when it's going to launch. We are aiming at somewhere in 2018. We're not sure in which form it's going to launch. But this is something that we're seriously looking at. But what I can say, there's a couple of very legitimate role players in this. The Aura has been something that's been coming along for over what are we looking at, 13 years now. So it's an established form of trade. And now our next move is to take it into the cyberspace. If you can just add one more thing, and your show is the first guys to hear about this. There's two businesses in Pretoria, which is situated 700 kilometers from ORANIA, that said, well, the moment we launch this cyber form, this cryptocurrency form of the Aura, their businesses will definitely accept it and make use of it. And this is two rather prominent restaurants that's situated in the Gauteng area, the province, situated about 700 kilometers from ORANIA. So I think there's the possibility to do this nationally is not that far-fetched anymore.
That is,
and you guys are the first to hear it.
that is absolutely amazing, James, because I look at your pioneers and the small beginnings, and I look at what you're doing now. I mean, South Africa hasn't even thought about cryptocurrencies, really. It's an amazing step forward. But then the Afrikaner has always been creative and started new things, done new things, never been scared to step out ahead of the crowd and do something different. And that just, I'm so chuffed for you guys. I really am. It's an amazing thing.
Well, Karin, if we talk about the pioneer phase, I think, 26 years ago, the pioneers were standing there. It's standing here, well, more or less in the same house, and taking phone calls through a telephone central, what do you call it, those central units, and now we're talking on Zoom. Now we're talking via the internet over 3 different continents. Yes,
it's totally amazing to me. I think I'm the generation that all of this has happened in my lifetime, and it's sometimes too much for my brain. I'm always amazed at how I'm sitting here, Belle is sitting in Portugal, you're in South Africa, and yet it's as if we're in the same room.
Absolutely.
I can't wrap my head around it. I'm technologically stupid and happy to be that way, actually. This always amazes me. So, okay, we've spoken about the people around you. Now we need to talk about financing. What do you grow? What do you do? How does your economy keep going and growing and being vibrant?
We've got 4 trade sectors that I'd like to, or rather economic sectors that I'd like to specifically refer to. The one is agriculture, and I think one of the biggest misconceptions about ORANIA is that we function like a kibbutz. It's not a system where everybody works the land and the money goes to a central unit or a central form of government or something like that. The people that are busy with agricultural activities here, they own the land, they work the land, they plant at their risk, and they harvest at their, at their, what do you call it, profits. With regards to agriculture, firstly, we've got pecan nuts. There's about 160 hectares. I don't know if that unit of measure makes sense. Hectares. Yeah. Is that fine? If you guys might want to translate it to acres, I'm not sure. But you guys are familiar with pecans? Pecan nuts.
Yes.
Okay, that's cool. And then lucerne as well. That's mainly harvested for feed for cattle and so forth. And then corn and maize. What's interesting about the corn, there's two different forms of corn that is planted here. The one is the normal corn that you get on your plate, that you eat, out of the pots. The mealies. That's the common name we South Africans use. And then the other is the popcorn, which is a much smaller kernel that pops when it gets into contact with heat. So that's the two forms. Another sector is the production sector as well. We've got people here producing bricks now. ORANIA has had an explosion when it comes to the construction sector. So that's going quite well. So there's a lot of people that's produce bricks here, and is quite big at the moment. And then the services sector. If you, I can refer to, for example, one call center that was put up here in ORANIA a while back by a private entrepreneur that has, I think, just over 50 call center workers in their service, and they provide services to companies that's situated right across South Africa. So to make a comparison, Karin, you guys living in the States, you know the reference to the Indian call centers. Well, in ORANIA, well, if you receive a call from a company in South Africa, it might very well be someone from ORANIA. And then the last sector that I just want to refer to is the tourism sector. ORANIA's tourism sector has exploded, especially over the last few years. It includes camping terrains, it includes a hotel, it includes a spa where people go for very fancy spa treatments. I've gone once myself with my wife. I'm a little ticklish for the massage, but it's I champion through, and restaurants and things like that. So there's the tourism sector. I must say that's the sector that I'm most excited about. It's really exploding at the moment.
I've read posts from people who've been to ORANIA for the weekend or the long weekend, and they are full of praise for the amazing place it is, how clean, how neat, how much fun it is, what good food you've got. I follow you because I really, as I've said before, I really admire what you guys are doing, because so many would like to and so many are just not getting there. And it's sad because you've proven that it can be done. And I don't understand why more are not following in your footsteps. Maybe they don't have the drive, the ambition, the need. But in the long run, maybe it's just people don't want to give up their creature comforts and start again. Because we are not the hardy breed that the earlier Afrikaners were, that the Afrikaans were when they jumped in their ox wagons and trekked. We are townies, as you said, who like our comfort, our soft beds, our hot running water, our hot Wi-Fi. We're just not built that way anymore. So my admiration is even greater for your pioneers who went from that soft life with servants and did this. It's an amazing thing to me.
No, yeah, Karin, it is, and I must say, I have a lot of respect for those pioneers. I'm not one of them, though. I got here with the Wi-Fi in place, and with the DSTV shuttle, attached and things like that. So I got here with the luxuries, but it is still at this very late stage of ORANIA's existence. It's still a bit of a jump. For a lot of Afrikaners, it's still a bit of a jump to, from having this comfort, still utilizing the cheap labor that cost them their political power, still utilizing, or rather not wishing to accept the fact that you can't always trust government, that what the government decides is not always good for you. They still have to make that huge jump. And it's still a long way to go, I think.
Can I jump in here quickly, Karin, if I may? I just want to say, as a English-speaking Afrikaner, I was born into a Boer family. one of the things that, as a sort of someone who's left South Africa out of fear for the political situation, whatever else, lack of opportunities for white people, I am just absolutely amazed that there is a place where our cultural heritage is being preserved. The Africana cultural heritage is being preserved without being exclusionary of other cultures. And for me, that sets such a brilliant example, because there is a major cultural genocide going on, not just in South Africa, across the world in various ways. And being able to preserve one's culture should be an inherent right of people. And, you know, I'm just absolutely amazed that you've managed to do this, and that yet you're not coming under complete and utter rebuke from sort of the government sector. How do you guys deal with that, and have you managed that?
Mel, I'm gonna answer that question just now. I just want to backtrack to one of the other comments that you made, and it's something that I found very interesting myself. Is if you look at the kids that grew up in ORANIA, they find it much easier to interact with people from other backgrounds, other cultures, other ethnicities, and so forth. Than, for example, an Afrikaner that grew up in a metropolitan situation, and I think where he actually was in contact with kids from other ethnicities, cultures, and so forth on a daily basis. I've thought about thought a lot about it, and one of the conclusions that I reached was that, you know, I think a kid that has no fallback, that has no heimat, that has no, you know, place to call his own, where his culture is guaranteed, comes from a much more aggressive stance when he has to interact with other cultures than a kid that knows, okay, I can interact with anybody on an equal footing, knowing that I have a community where my culture and my being is being protected and promoted and so forth. So just as a side remark, what's also very important is we liaise with government on all three the government levels in South Africa on a regular basis. We coincidentally on Thursday we have a meeting with the departments of arts and culture from the local provincial government, Northern Cape provincial government, and that meeting is going to take place here in ORANIA. 4 delegates from the provincial government is coming into ORANIA. On a previous at a previous time, we went through to the provincial government's offices in Kimberley, about 160 kilometers here from ORANIA, to speak to the provincial premier. A meeting that was supposed to take place for about, I think, an hour. Later we were speaking for over 2 hours. We've got a very open door policy both ways with the provincial government and from ORANIA side as well, saying that when we need to talk, we are willing to talk and for as long as possible, for as long as needed. We also interact with the other local governments, other local municipalities, but we've also had presidents visiting ORANIA. Jacob Zuma, the current president, is one of them. Former President Nelson Mandela was here at one stage. Even the current EFF leader and then ANC Youth League leader, Julius Malema, has visited ORANIA. And so we liaise with various politicians, regardless of their political views or political backgrounds, on, well, actually as much as possible, because we want to know what they are thinking, what their perceptions are. If needed, we want to rectify those perceptions. Luckily, it has not been necessary because we liaise so much, because we talk so much. They know what ORANIA is about. And the one thing that happens when we interact with government, it's not a situation of, okay, we need this and you need to do this for us and we want this. We don't stand there with a begging attitude. We say, okay, what can we do? What do you guys need? You know, how can we contribute? And it was one of the most interesting things. At a previous meeting with President Jacob Zuma, he was actually very interested in the ORA system, saying, you know what the ORA can do. If we implement it in other communities, it probably won't be called the ORA, it will be called something else. But if we can implement that in other rural communities, black rural communities or colored rural communities, or whatever the case may be, that community will be able to keep the spending within the community. And that's something that government wants to see as well, because that's one way to alleviate that community out of its poverty situation, by making sure that people, when they receive a social grant or when they receive a salary or whatever the case may be, that they don't go to the next big town big city and go splash it there where it's just another drop in the bucket, but that they'd rather spend within their own communities.
Oh, wow. Amazing. It's absolutely amazing. We would have the impression normally that something like ORANIA, which is very much, I think, on the cutting edge of where we need to be heading, self-determination, your own currencies within the community, preserving your cultural heritage while still embracing other cultures and interacting with other cultures, is ultimately where it's an icon in a way where we need to be heading. It's just amazing that it's there in South Africa in a time where we seem so much moving in opposite directions. A lot of centralization of power, a lot of corruption, a lot of violence and crime. And of course, you guys have a very low, absolutely no crime or very little crime. So do you want to speak to that?
Well, you mentioned a very important word to me now, that's the centralization of power. And I think that's one of the most dangerous things that could happen in any country, and South Africa included. Right now, we're sitting in a situation where there's talks about making the provinces less. Now, when we look at the government pre-1994, we had 4 provinces in South Africa. I think that was something that the majority of Afrikaners and the majority of the white South Africans were quite accustomed to, and it seemed to be, second nature. But then post-94, we got 9 provinces, and now there's talks about doing away with at least 2 of them. And I think that's a dangerous step right now, is to centralize government once again in that way, with the very big opportunity that we have with 9 provinces being available. Is you're sitting with various premiers that's overseeing a smaller province. When I come from Pretoria, and I think one of the biggest mistakes that the Tshwane Metro now, as the Pretoria Metro government has now ever made, was saying, okay, let's do away with the municipalities that are surrounding Pretoria, and let's all amalgamate them into one big metro. Now you're sitting with rural and farming municipalities that's now taking into a metro municipality, where the challenges are all different. The Northern Cape's challenges is a lot different than that of the Gauteng province. Gauteng is made up out of Pretoria and Johannesburg, which is metro provinces, while on the other hand, the Northern Cape is a much more rural province. I think that's one of the biggest challenges when it comes to the centralization of power, is where you're creating a situation where all these provinces are coming together, and you lose the uniqueness of those provinces.
Yeah, because a one-size-fits-all thing does not work. It doesn't work. I mean, people who live in Johannesburg are living in an enormous big city with totally different challenges than you, who have no water in the middle of the Karoo, hot, dry, awful climate. The two cannot fit together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you, James, is about education, because I've seen your school. I've seen little pictures and movies, videos of your school kids, and it's very much like a Texas schoolroom. In Texas, you in the morning you go in and you salute the flag, the American flag, and the Texas flag, and oftentimes also the Christian flag, and then you start your school day. And that is how things traditionally have happened throughout the world. I mean, I remember at school many, many years ago, we used to do that as well, and often sang the stem before the school day started. Now, do you still do that? You teach, obviously, in Afrikaans, and is your curriculum accepted by the government, and you can go to university from your schools or not?
That's a very good question. I'm very glad you're asking that question. The ORANIA school models focus very strongly on Afrikaner culture, but without excluding very important subjects, that is needed by the South African governing bodies to allow a kid to get entrance into a university. I think the biggest challenge in schools right now, and I went through that same period of schooling in South Africa, growing up as a kid, past 94, entering high school and so forth, where you tend to get bombarded by guilt. You only get taught one perception of history. You are told only how evil and bad and so forth your forefathers are, even though they paid a huge contribution to South Africa's development. So there's only one limited part of Afrikaner history being portrayed in our schools, in the state schools. Then in Orania, Orania has a very balanced approach when it comes to that. But right now, if I can tell you, we've got at the Northwest University, the former Potchefstroom University, we've got 6 students there right now. We've got some students at various other campuses right now. So our kids finish school in Orania, they finish their matrics, or the matric rather, the grade 12, what's it called in the States or other countries, but they finish that, and then they go off to universities. If they want to, some kids enter the job market right away. Other kids get technical training. There's 3 tertiary training institutions in Orania right now that they make use of. That's one of the reasons why we're looking at also building a university here in Orania right now, to create room for those 3 tertiary institutions and the that is planning to move to Orania.
Oh, so essentially you've got what we used to call a tech, where you taught trades, a trade school.
Yes, there's one that focuses on recognition of prior learning. That is where you look at some of the guys that this is older guys that has worked on construction sites for some time now, and they go through a short course, and then they basically have to perform a practical exam where they prove what they have done over the years. So that's one that focuses on recognition of prior learning. Then there's another that take kids from grade 12 onwards to do engineering courses and so forth. That's focused more on the practical side, but where they can also get an engineering degree. But that's focused much more on the practical side of the qualification. And then, of course, kids go off to universities all across the country, and they integrate well. I think that's one of the other questions that people also tend to ask is how do they integrate? How do they adapt to universities where they, that's multicultural, multilingual, and so forth. And I must say, from what I've heard and from what I've seen, it seems that those kids are adapting much more and much easier than some of the kids that grew up in the metros, in the bigger cities.
Wow. Wow. And then, James, you don't have a police force, do you?
No, we do have what we call Orania. We can call it Orania Safety and Security. We don't have a police station in Orania. The closest one is about 40 kilometers away. We do liaise with them because there has been an instance where there's a motor syndicate that's active in the broader Karoo, Upper Karoo. Let's see where Orania is situated. Now that's a vicinity stretching over quite a 100 kilometers in 100 kilometer region. So we do liaise with them and just to make sure that if there is something like that we are aware of that we have some patrols in the evenings and so forth, just to make sure that we don't become victims of that. But no, we don't. I think a police force, police station in Orania would probably waste their time and tax money.
Yeah, you don't have crime, do you? Really?
We have had instances of small crime, for example, a cell phone being stolen and so forth. What I must also mention in that regard is that we're a project what we call sub-economic housing. Now, sub-economic housing is providing housing for people that would otherwise not be able to afford it. And I'm not saying that that's the only incident, or that is mainly where the crime from, but we have also now gone through a system where a person that applies for sub-economic housing. Now, this is people that literally yesterday was begging on the streets of Joburg, and it's now being provided a second chance. What we're saying is a person, and actually any person, wishing to come to Orania and apply for sub-economic housing or that specifies his criminal record. So you can get an idea of who or what you're dealing with. And we're not saying that a person that stole a bread 10 years ago or that got into a bar fight once or something like that will not be allowed access to Orania. We're not saying that no person is rehabilitatable. What we're saying is we just want to know what we're dealing with, and that kind of cuts out the risks to a large extent. For example, a person that is currently being wanted by the police, or a person that has a criminal record that's a mile long, and the last crime he committed was 2 days ago. Yeah, that you tend to protect your community from people with records like that.
That was the other thing I wanted to ask you about is how does one become part of Orania, and who makes the yes or no decision?
We do have a system where people send in an application form, but that application form is actually, like I said, I've taught the guys at the municipal building as well. You must find another word for that, because application form tends to create the impression that you could be weighed and found to light or something like that, which is not the case. We just want to make sure that any person who wants to move to Orania understands what the community is about. If a person wants to come here and continue the mistakes that the Afrikaner has made over 60 years in government, he's not going to be able to adapt to Orania. If a person wants to come here and I was going to say tend to the either the extreme left or the extreme right side, he will also not be able to adapt to Orania. So we just want to, it's basically just a system to make sure on the one side that this person understands Orania, and on the other side that he is happy with Orania. We also don't want to be unfair to that person and create a misperception of what Orania is about, and give him the opportunity to decide, okay, Orania is for me, or you know what, Orania is not for me. So that's actually what the system is about. It's not to make it difficult for people to move to Orania or prevent them from moving to Orania. It's basically just to have an honest, open approach about what we are about and if they will be able to adapt in Orania.
That's amazing, because that one of the anti-Orania things that I have heard is that you have to have a lot of money to go there, because unless you've got money to offer, they don't accept you. But you've just talked about second chances and sub-economic housing, and that kind of negates what people have said. So second chance people who you say were begging on the streets, do they do the same process? Do they then do their, which we don't want to call application, but do they then go through the same process as everybody else? And how do you then go about getting them back on their feet? If they don't have any money and skills, etc., how do you do that?
We absolutely have them go through the exact same process, but what we do then is we provide, when available, we provide them with affordable housing. We've got 4 projects right now in Orania. The one is aimed at single men. It's called Elim. There's 47 guys living in Elim right now, guys that rocked up in Orania, a lot of them with nothing more than a shopping, little, these plastic shopping bags with all their valuables in there, nothing else. And Checkers bag, that's I often use that example, but I'm not sure if all your viewers might know what a Checkers is, but a Walmart bag. Anyway, so and then they are put into contact with a possible work provider, employer, and the employer might be in the construction sector, he might be in the agricultural sector, it varies. So right now that guy has affordable housing. Karin, I'm not saying free housing. That we don't do, because if you provide a guy with free housing, he doesn't learn the responsibility. So we're saying, okay, you're going to pay far below the market rate, or the going rate for this accommodation, but you have to work for this and you have to pay for this. And then sooner or later, the guy moves into his own place that he rents privately from a private supplier, and he integrates into the community completely. Another project that we have is called Narina. Narina is aimed at young women, many single women. Some of them are single moms, and that's women that's the women tend to be in a bit of a better economic situation than the men. I don't know what we guys do to screw up that badly, but the women tend to be in a bit of a better economic situation, and they, sometimes it's young teachers that don't have enough of a nest egg to put down a deposit on a home or a private rental flat or something like that. Other ladies work as work at the tills and in some of the shops or so forth. And then there's Suduring. Suduring is aimed at families, mom, dad, and the kids. And we tend to invest more and more in families, because we see that families anchor better into a community. Young single people, they might be here for a while. They might not come to ORANIA for the cultural reasons. So ORANIA is just another place that provides them with a job for a while, and then they tend to move on earlier. Where families, they anchor into a community. The parents anchor at their various jobs, the kids anchor at the schools, and families tend to stick. And then there's also another project where we have started with, and that is where we look at people that's been here in ORANIA, working in ORANIA for quite some while, but they never get the capital together to buy a house. And we want them to be homeowners. And then there's stands made available at very affordable prices for them, and they are provided with rent-free loans to put down the deposit on the place, and what we call interest-free, sorry, not rent-free, interest-free loans to put down the deposit on the stands. And then they take it from there. They build their places, they build their houses, and then they become homeowners. And I think that is what we, at the end of the day, that's what you want to get at a person that moves into Elim, where at one stage he's a homeowner in ORANIA. He's exercising his right to vote. He's exercising his rights at the school board, elections and things like that. So that's the point that you want to get a person, where he's completely integrated into the community, and where he's an active and involved role player in the community.
I love it too that you give a hand up but not a handout, because once people, as you said, once people then get used to, oh, well, you'll pay our bills for us and we've got free accommodation, we don't need to contribute to their community. And that is a big failing point in the world today, is that there's so much social security or the dole or whatever that people just don't need to work and they don't contribute, and they raise a family that doesn't need to do it either. They're entitled, whereas you are making sure that you work for your living and contribute to the community and get your pride back that way. Because people who come to you with nothing then have some pride in who they are and what they do and what they contribute. It's actually a wonderful arrangement. So why then are there not more ORANIAs? The whites in South Africa so badly need this concept. Why are there not more?
Karin, I think ORANIA is still a strange concept to a lot of Afrikaners and white South Africans in general, because what a lot of people still want to do is they want to take their existing communities back, take the country back through the electoral system. And I'm not saying to, don't use of that. I say make use of every avenue possible. Make use of the civil rights avenues. Make use of the political avenues. Make use of every possible system, at your availability. But it's still a bit of a strange concept for people to move away from the existing government institutions and create their own thing. If I can just go back 17 years in ORANIA's history, 17 years ago, ORANIA had to enter a case to get self-governing rights on a municipal level. ORANIA was almost integrated into a larger municipality, and we said, no, we want to keep managing our own municipal affairs. We want to elect our own mayor. We don't want to pay any of our municipal taxes over to another municipality or county for your listeners' sake. We want to, keep on going on independently. And we luckily that court case ended up really nicely for us, because all the parties involved in it, that was on all government levels, once again, municipal, provincial, and then national, they all agreed and said, okay, we're not going to contest, or rather, we're not going to fight ORANIA on this court's application that they've brought. And the court ruling was then made with all the parties involved agreement. And so I think the battle is quite strong as well to get government, acknowledgement on a municipal level. But nothing stops any South African, any Afrikaner, regardless of where he's living, to practice some of the basic principles that we have in ORANIA. It's helping thy neighbor, or supporting private schools rather than I must say just obliged by whatever the state school is teaching my kids, and just let it be. So there's no reason why, if you look at the basic principles of ORANIA, that people can't support those principles and live out those life principles wherever they are living.
And you've done it. So they have the example and they have your expertise, because you're not shy to help the people around you to do it. So I'm quite sure that the ORANIA people would be very happy to give their expertise to another group of people who would then find it easier, because they don't have to find their way blindly like the ORANIA people had to. So,
absolutely, Karen. Sorry, absolutely. We are willing to liaise with any community that's looking at this at this way that ORANIA is. I must say, one other challenge about just starting up another ORANIA in any place is you have to look at the demographics in a specific area. The one success that ORANIA has is that it's the biggest province in the country with the scarcest population, the smallest population in the country. And that's ORANIA's success, is that we're saying this is a place where the Afrikaner can form a majority in a specific geographical area.
But you don't have to you don't have to only speak Afrikaans to be there. It's open and accepting of, say, for example, English-speaking Afrikaners like me.
Mel, absolutely. I think the biggest thing, we've got a German couple that recently moved to ORANIA. We've got and we do have English-speaking South Africans that has moved to ORANIA. The biggest thing about ORANIA is, though, that we exist in accordance with the Constitution, specifically Section 235, that makes a community such as ORANIA possible. So what we're saying is we're not a white community, we're a cultural community, we're an Afrikaner cultural community, and that anyone wanting to move to ORANIA would have to, be acceptant of that culture and then integrate into that culture of the community. But we open our arms to anyone that's willing to do that.
So your kids would have to accept being educated in Afrikaans if they went to the schools in ORANIA, or would there be any opportunity in the future to bring in other languages as an international educational base?
Mel, that's an interesting question. I think that's only one that the schools can answer. Unfortunately, I'm not on the governing bodies of one of the schools, and I don't have any input there. But right now, yes, the education basis of the schools, the language of education is only in Afrikaans, and the curriculum is aimed at the Afrikaner culture and heritage and history and so forth. But I must say, and I've seen this many times before. I've seen a brilliant example quite recently in the last month of an English-speaking couple that moved to ORANIA that has completely integrated into the community. I'd like to say a bit more about where they are involved right now and so forth, but they might be watching this and being blushing, and so forth. But there's brilliant examples of people moving to ORANIA and integrating into the community completely.
Yeah, such a great community. Why wouldn't you? And the principles by which you operate really, you know, can be duplicated and replicated in so many other ways and in such necessary ways in other parts of South Africa. And I'm very proud of what you guys have achieved, because I think the Afrikaner for the longest time has gotten the hugest amount of slack and flack from people being labeled with the racism dogma and all that. But yet here is an Afrikaans-based community really setting the trend of where we need to be going as, I think, a global community. You know, decentralization of power, self-determination, currencies within our community. And that is really the cutting edge of stuff. And you guys have done very, very well.
Thank you, Mel. No, I appreciate that. I think, well, if you look at a recent example of, I don't know if you guys picked it up, I'm not going to mention his name, but there was recently an Afrikaans celebrity was apologizing for everything the Afrikaner did before him, wrong before he was even born. And I am planning to enter into discussions with him personally. Say, and I've said this on other platforms as well, that if you want to play a positive role in for your own culture, for your own heritage, for your own community, but also in the broader South Africa and in the broader province or so forth where you find yourself, there's no need to apologize. I think actually to apologize actually puts your own culture and your own heritage on a back foot that it does not necessarily deserve to be. What you should ask, okay, what can we do? How can we contribute now without, putting your own community, your own culture, your own heritage, your own people in a negative perspective or in a negative point of view. When it comes to the Afrikaner situation, the Afrikaner history, for example, I think the last Afrikaner should do or have to do is apologize. But what we could do is say, what can we do? How can we contribute?
Yeah, absolutely. This whole white guilt, it drives me insane, because we are who we are. And I'm very proud of who I am. I'm very proud of my background. I'm very proudly South African. Okay, I'm African American now, but that's beside the point. But I am proudly that, because we have a wonderful history. We have done remarkable things in that country, and we have nothing to be ashamed of. The whole apartheid thing was self-determination. It was giving everybody a chance to do what you're doing, be who they are, be governed by their own people, speak their own language, live in their own area. As you said, there are things that were not good during apartheid, but there are in any era of any human group of people. There are always bad things. We're not 100% right. We're not 100% wonderful. We did bad things, admittedly. But in general, it was for the good of. And it's unfair that we're expected now to stand up and apologize. And my grandchildren, why? They weren't even born then. Why should they apologize for something that they had no part of? So that I agree with you 100%. The worst thing we can do is I'm sorry, sir. I'm not sorry. I am not sorry for the mistakes we made. We made mistakes. We tried to correct them. We learn from them and move on. But I'm not sorry for who I am, where I come from, the great things my country has done. Yeah. So, James, there's another thing that is a big conversation thing about South Africa at the moment is the redistribution of land, taking it away without compensation. I know you had a land claim on Orania. I'd like you to address that as well.
Yes, Orania had a land claim on it. Karin, I'm going to lie to you when I say exactly when it was, quite a few years ago, and it was paid out. Government acted as the mediator. Then it was paid out to the claimants. If you look at the land debate, it's actually mainly led by a very small but very vocal group. And if I can give you the Afrikaner perspective, and I must say I believe this is a bit much broader as well than the ORANIA perspective. Is if you own it, if you have it with regards to land, then you have to develop it. You have to make something of it, not just for yourself, but also for the people that directly around and on that land can benefit from it. And that is something that the Afrikaner has always done. Look at food distribution or rather food production and things like that. If you look at developments in metros and cities and so forth, the Afrikaner has always looked at land and said, okay, how can I develop this for the good of all and for the good of the many? And that is the same if you look at the approach that the majority of people in ORANIA have is, okay, well, how am I going to develop this land and create jobs from that for my fellow Afrikaners living here? And if you look at so many of the land claims, right, a big headline in the newspapers recently, I can't remember who said it, something tells me was President Zuma, but when you look at so many of the land claimants that have entered into a land claim and it was successfully ruled in their favor that they do have a claim to, they said, okay, but I don't want the land, I want the compensation in rand, in the currency. I want the compensation in money. And that's not a claim to that. Then one shouldn't tell me that you want the land back because of this and that emotional reason. That means you want the money. And that is something you see so much nowadays, the majority of the times. And if you look at the guys, the few vocal politicians that say, but we want the land, then the question that they should ask themselves, and they should ask their supporters and ask for a very answer, do you want the land, or you actually just after some form of compensation in the form of money?
Because so many of those farms that have been handed over are now in desperate straits. I mean, there's no production, nothing happening. The houses have been taken down brick by brick. It's a disaster. And one needs to understand that if you keep doing that to farms, you're going to starve like Zimbabwe. You know, you just can't keep doing that. So you don't think that this will affect ORANIA in any way?
No, I don't believe it will affect ORANIA. But once again, ORANIA does not exist in isolation. And there are so many projects, Karin, as you've mentioned now, where it was handed over to the communities that put in the claim, where the cattle are dying, where animal rights organizations such as the SPCA had to move in, go kill chickens and cattle, other livestock. So it's well, due to the fact that they were no longer savable. So there's just too many examples of once very economically flourishing farms that has got the drain because it was handed over to people without the skill. I've got no problem with developing farmers at a very responsible rate, but it's another thing to hand over in a time where South Africa has gone from a netto exporter to a netto importer of agricultural products. I think the most irresponsible thing government can do is say, okay, we're going to take this away from a farmer that has done this for many years and give it to people that has no expertise in the agricultural sector, and because of the threats of expropriation without compensation and things like that, there's a lot of Afrikaner and South African farmers that is going to other countries like Georgia, next to Russia, like other countries, the DRC in Africa and places like that. So we are losing a lot of capable, experienced farmers that is providing crops, that's providing food, not just for a select few. They don't plant an entire crop and say, okay, I'm only going to sell this to white people. They are planting crop for the benefit of all South Africans.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the burgeoning explosion of people in South Africa, you're going to need more farmers, not less. So it's actually frightening that they're even considering that possibility. I'm just coming up to the last few minutes. So, James, if there's something that we have not addressed that you would like to address, the floor is yours, actually, because I've been jumping in and attacking you on all sides. If there's something you'd like to address, please go ahead.
Karin, we've such a wide spectrum. I can actually not think of something. I'd like to ask you about Texas and the Senate and things like that, because I watched the primaries and so forth quite closely. I'm wondering if Ted Cruz is up for re-election. So there's so many questions that I have about your state and about your country, but I can't think of something there about ORANIA that we have not addressed. Is there something that still jumps to mind for you?
Just as I keep on saying, and I sound like a bit of a stalker type fan by telling you how amazed I am and incredible it is. It is for me, because I have spoken to so many South Africans who talk about self-determination, and they want the Cape to secede, and they want their own place. But the example is in front of them. I cannot for the life of me understand how they're not taking a leaf out of your book, coming to you and saying, help us do it again. The only other thing I wanted to ask you, James, is now the whites who are in the squatter camps. Mm. How can ORANIA help these dispossessed people? Because they need help, and they are exploding in numbers.
Karin, I'm going to answer that question just now. I just want to jump back to the other one. You mentioned, for example, the initiative of possibly having the Cape succeed, and other initiatives. There's a lot of initiatives, and some of them are standing quite critical to the ORANIA model. I think the one comment that I've heard is, guys, James, if you guys make a success of ORANIA, then the Karoo, you're spoiling the markets once we want to negotiate for something down here, in the more flourishing provinces or something like that. And it's, that I'll take that criticism. But I'm not opposed and I'm not negative about any of the other initiatives. If they want to take on their own model, if they want to put their power, their resources into that, then I respect that. If they're not buying into the ORANIA model by now, then I respect that, and I wish them all the best, and I do hope they succeed, because if there's a lot of other models similar to ORANIA, then it can only be good for the Afrikaner. It can only be good for minorities in South Africa. So I stand critically towards them, and I do invite them, if they ever want to visit ORANIA, if they want to enter into discussions with us, if they want to hear we would like to hear how can we help, because we don't only want to ask that question to the government. We don't only want to ask the municipal, provincial, and national government and other communities such as the Xhosa, the Khoisan communities, how can we help you? We also want to know from other Afrikaner initiatives, guys, how can we help you? But I must say the Afrikaners are a proud bunch. The guys still live here in South Africa. We're a stubborn bunch, and we don't ask for help or assistance easily. But it's not to white poverty in general. It's definitely something that has increased to a very large extent. It's something that's being denied by the government, and it's squatter camps and informal settlements that's getting very little to none government support. From ORANIA's perspective, what we don't want to do is just move the problem. You don't want to move one squatter camp from Johannesburg to another squatter camp in ORANIA. What we want to do is we want to bring people here and provide them with decent housing and the opportunity to enter into a job where they can become self-sustainable, provide for their kids, let the kids then rise up and above their parents' circumstances, finish school, possibly even go off to university and things like that. And we do liaise with organizations in Gauteng, in the Pretoria and Johannesburg area, and in other parts of the country as well. And there are families or individuals that we bring to ORANIA and say, okay, we can accommodate you, we can assist you with housing and so forth. One of the biggest challenges for sitting here with ORANIA right now is having a 12% and higher growth in population is the challenge of housing. And when we talk about housing, we want decent housing. We don't want people to live in informal settlements, especially in the ORANIA winters. It's much colder than it gets in Joburg and Pretoria. It's quite a cold winter night as I'm speaking to you guys right now. And we don't want to have people live in worse circumstances or the same bad circumstances where they used to live. We want to create a better opportunity for those people. Then it's not possible for us to move one squatter camp to another. We want to move people in as individuals or as families, as we have the resources and as we have the opportunity to provide a better life for them, and also to create an environment where they can contribute to their community, which will then be ORANIA.
So how many people are there in ORANIA now? Last time we spoke, I think there was, no, I don't even want to hazard a guess at it. How many are you? Because you obviously can't take in 1 million dispossessed whites.
Yeah. Now, Karin, ORANIA is just over 1,400 people living here. I think the last time we spoke, we had just gone over the 1,100 mark, yes, if I have it correctly. Yeah. So we've grown exponentially since then, and ORANIA continues to grow. And we, I must say, when I look at the building contractors, and every day I hear about new building contractors or building contractors expanding their teams, and I often think, will they all make a living? And then I look at the figures and I say, well, there's still too little, there's still too few of them. So we. But it's kind of a funny bottleneck where you have you don't have enough building contractors to build more houses, and you don't have enough houses or housing to house more building contractors. But it also provides for another interesting thing, which is a very healthy growth for a community that does not just explode from 1,400 to 20,000 overnight, where we work with the 4 or 5 year plan to grow ORANIA at a healthy pace.
Can I just ask for the media mentions? Give us your website again, please, James. We're heading towards the end of the show.
Sure, you're welcome, Mel. You can go to www.orania.co.za. The site is mainly in Afrikaans, but there is an English section at the top, and there's also an email address from there where you guys can send us a mail, and any one of me or any one of my colleagues will be happy to answer you in Afrikaans, English. I know we do Spanish, we do German, we can do Dutch. So we'll be able to help you in a variety of languages. 3 of the languages spoken by one of the guys. So.
I just want to say that, honestly, I mean, this is possibly one of the most amazing interviews I've ever done. I'm inspired and overawed, and I speak to a lot of amazing people all over the world. I just can't tell you how grateful I am for the fact that ORANIA exists as an example to the rest of the world of what can happen in a country like South Africa, even with all the drama that's going on there. But also, I want to say to you, James, you are a wonderful media spokesperson for ORANIA, and thank you for doing such a great job. And I'd like to one day meet you in person, visit there myself. So well done, and keep going.
Mel, I want to thank you and Karin as well. You guys are both amazing, keeping the independent media alive regardless of big media and, can we say fake news one more time, taking over. So it's good. It's good to have ladies like you out there. I appreciate everything you're doing for us. Thank you very much.
And Karin, where can we find you?
RadioFreeSouthAfrica.com. And please, 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 people, I'm going on a speaking tour in the next couple of months to promote interest and things about South Africa, the same as we're doing on this show. And I need money to travel, please, guys. I can't travel by myself. I'm disabled. I need to take a caregiver with me. I've got 3 shows lined up, 1 in Tennessee, 1 in Arkansas, and 1 in Florida. I need travel expenses, so there's a donate button on my site. Please help me. Please help me. I need to do this for South Africa's sake.
Brilliant. And of course, everybody, please continue to watch the shows that we do on Stop South African Genocide. All of the shows that we do are archived on our website, www.consciousconsumernetwork.tv, and the specially dedicated archive website, which is ccn.media. And of course, we have donate buttons there too. Being independent media, we are funded by the public. And I guess that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you very much, James, for your contribution to the information that we put out. And Karin, thank you as always for being a very astute and intelligent on-the-ball co-host. It's always great to work with you.
My pleasure, and thank you very much, James. I'd like to speak to you again soon.
Thank you very much, Karin, for the opportunity. And Mel, awesome to speak to you all the way out of Portugal.
Yes, yeah. We'll hopefully see you again in person.
That would be awesome.
Brilliant. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. It's been great to chat to people down ORANIA, and we'll be back with more Stop South African Genocide, bringing awareness to what is going on in South Africa. From me, Melvi, it's been great. I'll see you again. Take care.
If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Mainstream media exists for the purposes of indoctrination and manipulation of public perception. The world of free and independent media is growing, and with the upsurge in information now available in the public domain, it has never been easier to access free and independent media. The exploration of this information resulted in an experimental project which would provide a fully supported space for researchers, whistleblowers, and seekers of all kinds to express themselves and educate the world. On the 1st of January 2015, Conscious Consumer Network was launched to the world. Nobody thought we would make it this far, but CCN is the longest running free and independent media network of its kind. CCN is a unique collaboration of hearts and souls, bringing you information from different perspectives to educate and inform. Since we started CCN, we have had only one desire, the pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world, and this has not changed. Having overcome many challenges over the last 2 years, CCN is here to stay, and we've got great things lined up for 2017. Help keep CCN on the air by supporting the 2017 Network Support Fund.